Hi, this is Michaela with Honest Talk Radio. Honest Talk Radio is a space where we will be sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly in real, raw conversations to try and do our part to reduce the amount of shame, guilt, and judgment so many of us women face. Our hope is that through these conversations, you will feel supported and encouraged in every aspect of your life. So let's get started. This episode of Honest Talk Radio is brought to you by Swadu Swaddle by Good Catch, a family company launched in 2017. They are the leading in technology of fuss-free, easy-to-use, silent swaddles that are also hip-healthy and supports babies' cognitive and emotional development. To find out more about Swadu, go to www.swado.co. Welcome to this week's episode of Honest Talk Radio. I'm your host, Michaela, and this week is extra special because I'm joined by my bestie, Crystal. We'll be chatting over coffee and wrapping up this month's topic, which was all about advocacy. Hey, Crystal, I'm so excited to start Coffee Talk again because I feel like it's a great time having conversations around the different topics that we cover in the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about Crystal's experience advocating for herself when she found someone to say yes to having a VBAC after 2 C-sections. So, hey, Crystal.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here on Coffee Talk again. I missed Coffee Talk. So I think this is a great way to share our personal experiences because, as we all know, we relate to each other based on our personal experiences. And I'm hoping that my story will inspire another mom or family out there who really wants to have that VBAC. Because if I can do it after 2 C-sections, I promise you can do it after 1. Let's see. I found a midwife. We'll just start there. So I found a midwife who would say yes, but before I found that midwife, I did hit some bumps in the road. And I think it's important to realize if I didn't have the education, the confidence, or the support of other people who in my support circle saying it's possible, you just have to keep looking, I may have given up. So my first experience trying to have a VBAC was when I was pregnant with the twins. As Michaela knows, she was there about whenever I found out it was twins. And my immediate thought was, oh no, I can't have a VBAC because of twins. But as Dr. Stu, who we interviewed, or Michaela interviewed last week, you can have a VBAC with twins. But you are going to have an uphill battle and you're going to want to advocate for yourself and find a provider who's open to those options. And unfortunately, in my case, I just couldn't find someone to say yes. So thankfully, I had a C-section with the twins that was a more pleasant experience, and it kind of built my confidence a little more that some of my wishes were honored during that experience. And so once I found out I was pregnant with our 4th baby, I decided to go ahead and go interview some OBGYNs. So I made an appointment just like anybody would, but I didn't view the appointment as this is my provider. Like I'm going in and we're just going to start this journey together. I really kind of went there like, okay, they're going to provide me a service and I'm going to see if I like them. So I went with my list of questions, and you know, you guys remember these appointments are only like 15, 20 minutes. So I was in there with the nurse most of the time, and they calculate your due date and things like that. And then the OBGYN walks in and I'm like, hi, I'm Crystal. And, you know, and she's like, oh, I see you've had 2 C-sections. Okay, well, we'll just schedule that. And I'm like, no, I'd really like a VBAC. And then she's like, well, you've had 2, so do you know the risk? And it's just not something I do very often. You have to be a really good candidate. And so already it was like, I don't want to say yes to this. So I continued to ask questions, and the famous line that made me just realize I was in the wrong place is, she said, well, you know what? We'll just discuss that when you're farther along. So she didn't want me to talk about my birth experience or my desires or my wishes in that interview. She just wanted me to be a patient, move along. And as things got closer, I would be bought in then. It would be harder for me to leave, I think. So I left that doctor's office feeling a little like, wow, if I do go this way, I believe I'm going to be set up for failure because my doctor already is questioning my choices. And so you have to really learn to listen to those red flags, I think, and your intuition. So my gut said, Crystal, if you want a VBAC, this is not the place to have it. You're already fighting an uphill battle.
Well, and also you talked about, she said, well, you have to be a really good candidate, but she did not go on to say, these are the things that make you a good candidate, nor did she ask you if you fit that criteria. She said she dismissed it by saying, we'll talk about this later. And that, like Crystal said, having those, really listening to the conversation and not just spending time getting your point across, but really listening to how they're answering your questions plays a huge role in advocating for yourself.
Oh my gosh. I think that's such a great point, Michaela, because sometimes we hear yes, or I'm supportive, or yeah, I do VBACs, but we don't listen after that to their tone or their body language or just some of the things that they say. And you can pretty much pick up on VBAC supportive and, someone who's actually going to really be there. I guess there's some that they accept VBACs, let's say that, and then there's some that are very supportive, where they are on the same mission as you and they want to see you succeed.
You also want to know where do they deliver, because they might say, well, I support a VBAC. However, you might run into some issues with the hospital. And that is also another red flag, because then they're passing off the reason why you can't do it from them to the hospital policy.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you don't find that out until months down the road. Oh, by the way, you're going to deliver here. Oh, well, they have this policy and I have to be there the whole time and I can't. Or, and then again, it's kind of like women start to just give up hope, I think, after they are told no, no, no. And you have to really be clear about what you want. I mean, it's like anything else in life. If you want to go to college or you want to be successful at whatever it is you're trying to be successful, you have to have that clear vision and that know-how of like, I have to take this step with this step with this step. And if I hit a roadblock, I need to find a way to overcome it. And so when I left there, I was a little down because I just felt like, oh, well, now what do I do? So I just literally got on the phone and started calling midwives, and I started asking around, and I said, what midwives will do home births, VBACs? And I was in Washington at the time, so there's a lot of different midwives. And I was told no 3 or 4 times on midwives. They said, I'll take a VBAC, but not a VBAC 2C. And I went to and found one, and she wanted to interview me. And that was the difference, is that she wanted to talk to me to see if I was going to be a good patient for her. And then I was like, okay, this is the type of person that's kind of doing the same thing I'm doing. She wants to know if I'm going to fit her model of care.
Right.
So, so I went to that appointment, and guys, it was an hour and a half. It was an hour and a half appointment. I mean, we got to know each other. She understood my whole birth story from the beginning. The first one, she was trying to pinpoint where it could have gone wrong in the very beginning, all the way to how much education and passion do I have and willpower to see this through. And then we also talked about plans. What if I just decide in the middle of this birth experience that, I made a mistake. I don't like this. I want to go to the hospital. She said, this is our plan for a transfer that's non-emergent. This is like, you decided you just don't want to do this anymore. And this is our plan for an emergency transfer. And this is what it would look like. And here's what would be considered an emergency. And so we covered it all. And when I left that appointment, I felt like I had an advocate. I felt like she believed in me more than I believed in myself.
That's really what you're looking for. You want someone that's going to walk next to you side by side, as opposed to either pulling you along or being 10 steps behind you because they're not bought in.
Right. Or they don't fully believe in you. And unfortunately, I think a lot of OBs mean well, but they come from this fear. They manage pregnancy and birth like a medical condition or a disease. And that's really an OB's role, is to manage higher risk things. And a midwife's role is they view the birth process as this natural process that doesn't need to be, quote, managed. It needs to be watched. And this hands-off approach of they are very intuitive, and they very much understand the birth process.
They're observing.
Yes, they observe, and they know when little things start to happen that may indicate something is awry versus everything's awry and, oh my gosh, there's no way to come back from this. I feel like with my first birth experience, it was just like one, quote, emergency or problem after another. And instead of kind of hands off, let's back off and let labor do its own thing, it was let's keep adding things to it, in which case it spiraled into this situation.
Well, and like we heard from both Dr. Stroud and Dr. Stu, it's not always, it doesn't always come down to the person themselves. It comes down to how they've been trained. It comes down to, or the lack of training, if you will, in those variations. And it also comes down to the hospital policy. And, their hands and the nurse's hands are tied behind their back because of that risk or that fear, like you said, of being sued, or what legal ramifications are going to come out of this. Because I'm practicing managed care, whereas, like you said, the midwife has a much more, they're there to see and I don't even want to say react, because they don't react. They have a course of action in mind for different situations, as opposed to reacting to something immediately.
Right.
I'm not sure if that made sense, but
ability to not, I feel like they're not fear driven. I feel like midwives very much practice this, just honoring women in the family unit and really trying to explain even and letting the families decide, okay, here's where we're at. This is what we're facing. Here are our options. This is what I advise. And, if it's not an emergent situation and no one's life's in danger, they want the family to be the one who's in control of, like, what position do you want to be in, or what's more comfortable, or what do you want to do now? Versus I feel like in my first birth experience, it was less about what I wanted and more about that healthy baby, which, granted, we all want a healthy baby, but we also want a healthy mommy, because your birth experience matters and it impacts you moving forward. And that's something I know Michaela and I are super passionate about, is we want to change that idea that birth just happens and then and then that's motherhood moving forward. Motherhood starts when the minute you conceive and you even think about being a mother, you start planning for this experience. And if your birth experience, which is something super feminine and very unique and empowering, if it's not empowering, you almost feel like you're not ready to be a mom, I think.
Yeah, it definitely shapes. I can attest to being, a longtime friend of Crystal's. I can attest how you standing up for yourself in getting that VBAC has changed who you are to the core, not in a way of like you became a different person, but because you gained that confidence in yourself. You stood up a little bit taller. You approached situations with a little bit more vigor and confidence is the best word to describe it. And in everything, not just birth. I mean, in business, in advocating for Caitlin, your oldest, and, you know, those having that ability and that desire and strength to say, like, I need this, I want this, I desire this, and I'm going to go get it. As opposed to before, when it was like, well, I don't know, you know, you have a little bit of just that self-doubt takes over.
Right. Your self-doubt takes over. And as a society, we convince women that they know nothing about their bodies and that they know nothing about birth and that they should leave it to the experts. And I will say that something that I want to let our listeners understand is there is a difference between walking into a doctor's office and saying, so-and-so told me, or I read this in a book, versus advocating for yourself from a stance of, this is what I know to be true, these are my desires, these are my wishes, and this is what I want. Coming from that space, you present someone who's confident, self-assured, intelligent, things like that, versus, well, I talked to my friend and she said this. Well, to a provider, you just kind of look like someone who's wishy-washy and not committed, and you're maybe just letting other people influence you. And we all kind of go through that, like, okay, I'm gaining my wings, I'm like understanding what my rights are or what I want, and then there comes a time where you own it and you're just like, yes, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to push the fear to the side. And I think that's important to point out, and you can go into that, Michaela, is about processing those fears so that they don't come up later.
Well, I want to go back to what you were saying about, as a society, we are taught that we don't know our bodies, but honestly, we don't. You know, how many times have we taught a childbirth course and given the man and the woman a picture of the female anatomy, and we can't label it. We can't, you know, we can label the big parts, but the you know, it's an intricate system, and we aren't taught about our bodies. So therefore, we don't have the confidence to go in there without education to say what we want and what we desire. And to piggyback on your, you know, the ways to come at it for advocating, if you do have the education and you come from that perspective, you automatically have more confidence, because you know your why. You know the why, you know the how. You just need someone to help you along the way. And that's where what you're asking for from a provider. But you're not telling them. You want to have effective communication, because let's face it, we're all human and we don't like to be told what to do or what not to do. So just like we are walking and they're saying, I prefer this or I prefer that, a professional that spent their whole life going to school doesn't want to be told what to do. But if you take it from an angle of Dr. so-and-so or midwife so-and-so, I want to have a conversation. I want your opinion. I do want your thoughts on this, so that we can discuss situations and come up with an action plan that will be beneficial and effective.
And I think what we have to learn is it's a service-based industry, and you can say, this isn't a good fit. Just like some people are for some people, and, you know, some people's not someone else's cup of tea. You're not friends with everybody, right? Well, and you're not going to have that connection with everyone. And I think we just view this as like, well, this is who I'm told I have to see because my insurance, and I get that, but there's always more than one option. There's not one OBGYN for everyone on that one insurance. There's a way to talk through it and just say, this is not a good fit for me. And I think it's important to realize that a lot of people don't understand the difference between an OB and a midwife, and just understanding that that already opens you up to more options when you're open to different styles of providers, because in your local area there may be 5 OBs and 4 midwives. Well, now you have more to pick from. So
yeah, and to wrap up this this topic about advocating for your VBAC, I want to share with us, like, what was the outcome, and And how did that really, but how did that make you feel? What did you get from that situation?
Well, I picked the right midwife, I will say, because towards the end, when you're 38 weeks and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the longest I've ever been pregnant, you kind of start the self-doubt. And this is where it's important to have that really good person who's on your team, who believes in what you want as much as you do. So she was at the end of the finish line going, no, Crystal, this is what you want. We're just going to give baby more time. And ultimately, I had a successful VBAC. And I will say that I took steps. I wrote in a journal, I will have a successful, fast home birth. And, so my baby was born in 45 minutes. And actually, my midwife didn't even make it in time. It was just her and I in a bathtub. So trust me, your body can do amazing things, especially when it's aligned with your thought process. So 2 C-sections and a home birth that worked like a charm, and baby came out and she didn't cry and she was beautiful, and I got to hold her and experience that bond that I feel like it's just a different experience when there's not bells and whistles and things going on, and there's no shame in those type of births. I've had them, but it's different. And if you become passionate about wanting that experience, when you have it, it is, I can't even describe it in words, but I am a much different, more confident person because my body was not broken. I was told, you can't do this. Once you have these experiences, you can't have this other experience. And that was not the case. I did get that experience, and I felt like a rock star. I mean, there's no other way. And when my midwife did get there, she looked at me and she goes, see, I told you could do it. I wasn't even here. So,
yeah.
And then that experience after, it's just kind of euphoric, and you just think, wow, I did that. I went from the beginning, I set a goal, I set an intention, and I accomplished it, and it turned out beautifully. And I will say that even if I needed to transfer to a hospital, the ability to choose my path and own it is half the battle. I didn't have someone saying, you can't do this, you're going to do that, we're going to get an epidural because that's policy. I did what I felt was right and what I needed, and it worked for me and my family. And that's what I hope to inspire in others, is that you know yourself better than you think, and that you can do hard things and you can do things that are against the grain. You just have to find the right support system, be educated, and, take one step at a time.
Well, and I think the overall theme that is woven throughout your birth story can apply to so many other things in life and not just birth. This is just one aspect of what it looks like to stand up for yourself and to believe in yourself, because it's one thing to stand up for yourself. It's another thing to truly believe in yourself. And we've witnessed that through business. We've witnessed it through family, through, you name it, it applies.
I definitely don't think I would be sitting here talking on a podcast with my awesome business partner if I hadn't had that experience, because I always thought I was good at things, but I just never had that wow, I can do this. And now it's kind of like I'm unstoppable. It's just getting uncomfortable and figuring it out and having tough conversations sometimes. But it applies in all aspects of life, just like you said.
Yeah. And we, you said you're unstoppable. That's a feeling that's deep within inside of you. It's not something that grew out of that your story, out of your, it doesn't mean that hurdles and walls and mountains are not going to be put in your way, because they will be, and probably even more so when you are standing up for yourself. And that self-doubt again creeps in, that, feeling of being unsure and almost that imposter syndrome. Well, it could have worked. It worked for this person. And you might even, for those of you that are listening, you might be thinking that, well, it worked for Crystal, but it probably just won't work for me. You get rid of that imposter syndrome. Get rid of that feeling of you're not good enough. You're not worthy enough, because you are.
Mm-hmm.
You are strong.
Absolutely.
You are loved. And if you don't feel supported, we're here to support you, because that is what drives us.
That's why we're doing this. I mean, there is nothing magical about me or you, Michaela. We are just two people who are passionately sharing our experiences, hoping that we can also be the support system for you, because we know that you can do it. Like, anybody listening to this is capable of doing exactly everything that we've done, all the way from our birth experiences to launching a business that we're passionate about.
Yep.
And that's why we talked about it all, from birth to business, I mean, to nutrition. I think Honest Talk is covering it all. And this is why, because we believe in women, and we believe that if they're built up, that they can do really big things. So,
and on that note, I know for myself, I used to feel very much like, well, I'm just one person, so I can't really make that big of a difference because I'm just one person. And I know that, you know, with voting season coming up, you know, in the fall and things like that, we've experienced well, I'm just not going to vote because my voice doesn't really matter. But one person, one rung of the ladder at a time, you can make a difference. And it's powerful. And you were put here for a purpose, and finding your purpose is a journey, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it's constantly evolving and transitioning from one phase to another. But find your purpose, find your why, find your what motivates you and drives you. And like we said before, if you need that support and desire that encouragement along the way, Crystal and I are here for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us through Honest Talk. So on that note, we will be back next month with more coffee talk, and also, you know, reach out to us with your questions and share stories that you want other people to be heard. Maybe you're not ready to share it in person or on a stage, but if you want us to share it so you can inspire some other people and other women out there, then send us your stories to hello@honesttalkinternational.com. Thank you for listening to today's show. If you'd like to come on the show and have an honest conversation about connecting, relating, and encouraging women, contact us at hello@honesttalkinternational.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you can be in tune with all the great happenings. Have a great day.